Amanda Land.
It's the Amanda Land Ambassadors of the Week. Here they come, yo. Here they come. Here they come, yo. Here they come. Here they come, yo. Here they come. Bianca, how are you?
Hey, Amanda. It is so good to be here. It's true. We are in the same house, but I'm like, you're over there. I'm over here. But let me get your headphones.
Right, exactly. Pass them over.
Literally.
How are you? It's so nice to meet.
Oh my gosh, it's so nice to meet you.
I got my Unassimilable goodie bag, and I have been enjoying it. So thank you, and shout out to your publisher for sending out the goodie bags.
Yeah.
So we've been talking so much about coalition building and about the necessity to simultaneously like protect our peoples, but without siloing.
Yes.
And those are like key tenets in this book. But just tell me, first off, a little bit about your background for the people and how we get to this particular book.
Yeah, my background is I grew up in an ethnoburb. Oh, there it is. There's the cover.
Hey.
I grew up in an ethnoburb, so a predominantly Asian suburb outside of Los Angeles. I was educated in predominantly white schools, and then I found ethnic studies that basically saved my life and gave me a lens to understand all of this that we're living through. And so my background has mostly been in the classroom. I taught Asian American studies and ethnic studies at the high school and community college and undergrad level. I'm currently finishing my PhD. I'm a reluctant academic. I love to nerd out and read and write, obviously. But again, my calling is really to be in community and to cultivate spaces for radical learning and safety and nurturing for students.
What are ways in which you feel like, what are ways that you bring radicalism into that space for students? Because I think for a lot of us, you know, if you're not in school or you don't have kids in school right now, like we don't really know what the landscape is other than what we see on the news, which is often just like, okay, they're lying about history. As a, you know, as a professor, as a teacher, what is radicalism in that space? Because by the way, also, things that seem completely normal are considered radical now.
Yeah, right. Man, it's a lot. I mean, I ground myself in a lot of Bell Hooks's work on education, that the classroom remains this last site of possibility in these institutions that are, we know, not made for us, but right now very much eroding and falling apart. And the surveillance of academics, right? The repression at in state-funded institutions in my state right now, you can't even say the letters DEI, right? And so then what does it mean?
What state is that?
Texas. Which is a lot, but this isn't the beginning and this isn't the end. And so, you know, in the past, it's very much been about how then in my classroom space do I make sure, especially for students of color who come from racialized, marginalized backgrounds, do I affirm that they're not just consumers of knowledge, but they're knowledge producers. And so it's thinking very thoughtfully about pedagogy and how to empower the student and reconnect them back to their agency, to see the classroom as a site for healing, not just through the things we learn, but through the kind of community and the norms of communication that we set in the classroom. But I will say right now, I'm thinking about it totally different because of this phase of the fall of empire we're in. It's a lot. Like, I'll just give an example of something that happened in the past month, but I've been on book tour. And so a lot of my stops have been with community centers or universities. And I was talking to a faculty member at a public university in California in a very liberal area in a blue state. And then she kind of went offline for a while, which isn't a big deal. And then she came back and she goes, oh my God, sorry. Like, I wasn't able to continue communicating about this because our institution is shutting down 6 departments and laying off 64 faculty members, tenured, right? And I think and if you've been paying attention, right, this, again, isn't the beginning and it's not the end. Humanities, especially ethnic studies, women and gender studies, these centers that I write about in the book are literal lifelines for first-generation students like me, have systematically been defunded already. And this isn't the end, because I think we're going to continue to see this, right, as our country decides to fuel its addiction to war and genocide and bombs. We're going to continue to see the dismantling of public spaces and institutions like higher education. And then again, not to mention the hyper surveillance and even things like public funded grants and access to data set, right? Like the things that make this, albeit problematic settler institution go round are like, it's all coming apart. And so I've been thinking a lot then about my role. How do we, make sure that we really support the students and faculty who are, and not concede preemptively, that we defend these spaces. And at the same time, like by the time my kid goes to college, I don't want college to exist in the way that it exists now. Like we need to
tell me about that.
Right?
What do you feel about the version of college that exists now that you would like to see change?
It's exploitive. It needs to come down. And I feel that as a precarious PhD candidate, where I don't know when the funding is coming next year. And so many of peers who have given so much of their labor and their lives to these institutions can't make a living wage, right? And so then what does learning and teaching, what is that going to look like outside of these exploitive, extractive settler institutions? They must come down, and we must reimagine again what learning is going to look like. Education for everybody is the freedom dream I think a lot of us have been trying to manifest together.
It's so disheartening to me when someone on my YouTube yesterday said, "Amanda, what are you doing?" And I was like, that to me is a reflection of someone who doesn't see education as a valuable key element of our liberation, of our sustaining, of our survival, of our thriving, et cetera, which is a result of, right, a society that doesn't empower or that doesn't prioritize and that doesn't consider education to be something valuable, right? Like it's really, we are in the age of idiocy, and and they need us to be idiots in order to get like their ball across the line, right?
Yeah.
So when it comes to education as a concept and as a key element for revolution, I think I love what you're saying about just like education for all is not going to be just reading books, y'all. Like it's what books are you reading? That's why they're banning the books. Like it's where I got a library card yesterday, by the way.
My favorite underfunded public service.
I was like, I'm back in the library.
Yes.
So when you are in the classroom and you're like, all right, I want to do something, how does writing this book come alive?
Yeah, I wrote the book because, part of it is I wanted it to be a resource for educators and students.
I mean, as a creative, because even if it's nonfiction, there's creativity.
Yes.
How did it go from I know these things? Like, where were you? Did it just spark an idea? Was it something that sat with you for years and then finally you were like, it's time?
Yeah. Okay, so I think it actually happened during the pandemic, and not the book, but just the idea of making my voice public, because I was just, living my life. I had a private social media account because I was like, my students cannot find me. I need the separation, right? But then the pandemic happened and I wasn't meeting or seeing my students. And we were adjusting to online learning. And at the time also, we were, having this national racial reckoning. There was a spike in anti-Asian hate crimes. And I'm like, I talk about this stuff every day in the classroom. And I was feeling like, my community is just looking for frameworks and historical context to situate this particular moment in the larger picture of what America is. So I actually started making zines, and people who have been writing with me for a while know that I have one right here that I made. Literally,
I want to see a zine.
Yeah, right? And we need to bring these back because I think Jeff and you were talking about this. The surveillance on these apps is not it, and we need to put these in the bathroom.
Wait, unfold it for people because I don't think people know what a zine is.
Okay, this is one I made about the origin story of my book, and it basically just tells a little story of how I came up with the concept. But traditionally these were like tools of anarchist organizers to spread political information. It was a tool of political education made to be accessible to everybody. And a lot of times you'll see a QR code of like, this is to go learn more. This is to go sign up to join this coalition and get involved in this political community. Yes. Should we do a zine tutorial now?
I'm doing a zine tutorial.
Let's
now.
do some arts and crafts right now. I think we all need it. Yes. You can do it yourself. It's literally free. You just need a piece of paper and a writing utensil.
Literally.
And you can mass copy it, whatever workplace you go to, use their free copier. That's what I do. And distribute it into places that people frequent. And you get like a little political education moment. Yes, you've done this before.
So that's your zine, y'all. This is your front page, right? So all we did was we folded it.
Yeah.
Okay. Into threes or sixes, I guess, thirds. And then you have your front page. And then when you open it, now you've got this panel and this panel that can have stuff. And then you open it and this also has stuff. And ideally, even when you open this, it still connects to this.
Yeah.
Like, right?
It's awesome.
And
yeah.
And then the back can also have information. And then you'd be like, bam!
More. It never ends.
And so that is, but that's like such a really basic way for people to see that, like, oh, you can just like make the, because, and this is why I wanted to get the question answered from that perspective, because so many people feel like I have an idea or I have my thoughts. I want to get them heard. Oh, I don't have a publisher. So forget it.
Yeah, you self-publish. You make your own shit. Do it on Substack, or like literally what I did was I have a whole box of them. They're scattered around all my mess. But like, I mean, I was making them about the importance of the census, about anti-Blackness in Asian American communities, and unpacking the model minority myth and vaccine act. I like just, it was so much in the world. And I just felt compelled to give people little accessible, tangible.
So would you hand them out to people?
So because we were mostly online and at home at the time, I would take photos of them and like post them on my Instagram. But there are ones that I've copied. This one my publisher has helped me mass copy and share. I know, this is just a tool that I've learned from other political organizers, right? Like labor organizers have been doing this for a long time in places where it's maybe not safe to talk about the kind of political goals and coalition you want to build. Well, you can talk about it semi-anonymously through this. And it's a very, I think, strategic.
And it's affordable.
Yes, exactly. So I think, like as we, again, try to navigate and survive everything happening, things like that are like ways I'm exploring how to continue communicating the things that we need to communicate given the mass surveillance that we're all trying to navigate.
Do you know Mona Shalabi?
No.
I want you to look up Mona Shalabi's work. I'll send you a link, but she basically does that type of work in journalism spaces.
Oh, cool.
So she takes like statistics that are, difficult to necessarily grasp, and she'll like bring it into like doodles.
Oh, cool.
But but in like a really digestible, cool way. She's Iraqi, and she despises when people mimic her British accent, but she actually has a really beautiful British accent, so it's like very difficult not to mimic.
I'll have to look her up.
She's fab. She just did my podcast, Small Doses, which you will also be invited to do when we are doing our next batch of interviews.
Thank you.
So you're doing the zines, and the reason I ask these questions again is because process is really important to like verbalize. So many folks get stunted in this capitalist setup because they can't figure out from the beginning where the money gets made, so they can't figure out how to chart a path forward. So you're making the zines, you're in the house.
And I literally, that was it. I'm just making zines in the house, trying to survive, and not much else was going on. And eventually, you know, I mean, I've always kind of seen writing as an outlet. And so I would just self-publish on Medium or like small outlets. This doesn't exist anymore, but there was like a post-evangelical lefty blog called the Salt Collective. And I wrote about, you know, at the time, again, the spike in anti-Asian hate crimes, Andrew Yang was like telling people to go wear red, white, and blue and be American. And I was like, this is all
to avoid
being
hate crimes?
To avoid being hate crimed. Yeah. If you wear an American flag, you'll be okay, apparently. Right. Which is kind of also the genesis of the book.
Why didn't Black people figure
Should
that
have just thought of that, right?
Guys,
he had the secret. Right. So I just found, you know, where they would publish me. I don't think I even got paid for that, but I was just like, I just need to get this out. And I think it'll be helpful for folks. And also I'm really pissed off about this. And that was the beginning of me thinking more about this politic of refusal as opposed to assimilation. Right. And that was part of my process, like working this stuff out on outlets that would have me on my own platform, and the ideas and my own political education and unlearning was just rolling at that time.
So tell me about that, about your own political, because you said post-evangelical.
Oh yeah.
You slid that in. And I was like, well, what was the pre?
Oh my gosh. I write about this in the book, but I wasn't raised religious at all, but the Chinese immigrant ethnic church, the youth group ministry, they got me. They are very effective in the outreach and in the making you feel at home. And I did feel at home, right? And so that was kind of the space I belonged to. I was, it wasn't like I was like attracted to the evangelical space. It was more just like they found me, and it was a space where I felt racial belonging. And it was a space where I was receiving a framework on social justice and like Jesus caring for the poor. And I was like, yeah, I'm down with that. But the post part happened because I was working for an evangelical organization, and they decided to draw a line in the sand where they were like, everyone who is queer or trans affirming in their theology and beliefs has to leave. And you are no longer allowed to like everything you teach around like gender and sexuality has to be the traditional biblical, whatever, like a very heterosexist model. And I was going to a very queer women's liberal arts college, and that's where I was working. And I was also, you know, I knew I wasn't straight, but I was like, I don't know what language I have for myself, but I know that this not only doesn't sit right in my head and my beliefs, but it doesn't sit right with my body. And so I went through just this year-long phase of excommunicating myself from them. I did a lot of organizing with queer students and alumni and staff, and we tried to push the organization a certain way and show them, look, like the people who belong and who built this space with you disagree with this. But ultimately, they had a donor, I think, who was like, absolutely, we need to draw this line. Otherwise, I'm withholding my money. That's what the were. But, you know, for me, it's like, thank God I had that queer awakening, because that space was becoming too small for me anyway. And it led me, it really shapes now how I relate to institutions, how I kind of see the urgency of building community on our own terms outside of, again, these like high boundaried institutional lines of what it means to belong and what it means to have membership in a particular space. And I'm just kind of like, no, this is not healthy for me, and for me to thrive and self-actualize in the way I need to. I'm just becoming too big for the space. So it was really painful. It was very traumatic. And I write about it in the book, but I really do feel like the process of writing has given me closure about that time in my life. And yeah, I kind of just think it's what it is.
You're like, I mean, the tumult for, I think, a lot of people in the last 5 years has just been nonstop. If you are a curious intellectual person, you know, because it's very much, once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Yeah.
And then you're like, wait, there's this to see too? And this, and this, and this. And what I appreciate about your stance with Unassimilable is that seeing more doesn't inspire retreat, right? Like, and that's what I feel like I'm seeing from a lot of people in my own community right now, is this idea of, wow, things have gotten really, really bad. And so we need to not care about anybody else. And I think you can do both.
Yeah.
So tell me about in Unassimilable, where, so I had read the breakdown for people. I read the breakdown for the folks on my show, and I said Unassimilable offers a radical vision of Asian American political identity informed by a refusal of whiteness. And that's when they're like, ooh, where's she at? We want to meet Bianca. And collective care for each other. It is a forthright declaration against assimilation and in service of cross-racial and an anti-imperialist solidarity and revolutionary politics. So because language is such a barrier, even when we're all speaking the same language, there's a couple things that I would love for you to just break down for folks. Let's start with, what is assimilation?
Yeah, I think assimilation for a lot of folks is a survival mechanism and has been the only way to survive. Oh, hi.
But she has like her paw on the desk.
She's like, I want to know what's going on. And after that, give me the mic.
Like, it's just random. I'm like, okay, we're here with Bianca and Jedi.
I'm very allergic to cats, but I appreciate them. And I feel like I relate to the personality of cats. So I'm happy she's here.
Thank you.
But right, like for Asian folk and for a lot of racialized immigrant folks, as well as Native folks, right? Like assimilation is a violent method of reifying white supremacy and the racial hierarchy. And it's a process of stripping people away from their indigenous cultures and languages, right? I think the way I explore it in the book is the assimilation that happens in the binary of the good and bad immigrant. That is nothing new, but we're seeing especially literally today, right now, in this current administration, that sometimes when there is an explicit attack on immigrants, they're doing the divide and conquer, right? That's a very like understood strategy of the empire. But sometimes we do it ourselves. We say, okay, but we're the good immigrants. We're not like them. And, going back to the anti-Asian hate crimes, when I started writing the book, I was noticing a lot of like, oh, but we belong here. We came here the right way. We have helped build this country. We're the good immigrants, right? Like a lot of the reliance on this good immigrant trope that we've assimilated. And so we don't deserve to be hate crime. But for me, I'm like, why? What if I don't want to belong here? Why would I? It's an argument against assimilation because, again, why the hell would I want to belong here? Right. And this concept of assimilable and unassimilable has been used historically in immigration policy to decide who is eligible for citizenship and who is not. But again, we know that those categories are conditional, that there are groups that are, quote, the good minority who have assimilated. Actually, that belonging is conditional. And when there's a pandemic or when there's geopolitical conflict, they can easily decide to make you the enemy. Absolutely. So again, why would I want to play this game of assimilating and be, kind of being here in the right way when there is no right way to be in a country built on anti-Blackness and genocide? Like, right?
Say it again, please.
I think in immigrant discourse, there's a lot of like, oh, I came here the right way, or I'm the good minority, I'm the good American. There is no good or right way to be in a country that is illegal, right? That is built on anti-Blackness and enslavement and genocide. And so I'm really trying to make the argument that instead of trying to prove and labor our way into belonging here as Americans, this is an opportunity to actually indict America altogether and refuse to participate in its shenanigans and refuse to assimilate into its violent agenda.
And, there are people who would say, well, then why would you come here if it's so bad? Why would you come here? And so what do you say to those people who are
so there's a reason this is called Asian Diasporic and not Asian American, and I interrogate that pretty deeply because why are we in diaspora? Why did I come here to begin with, right? We're in diaspora not just because of this reductive American dream story of, oh, our ancestors wanted a better life and they dreamed of coming here for opportunity. Maybe they dreamed of staying home, you know?
Right.
Maybe it is because of the ongoing dynamics of colonialism and coloniality that set the conditions for why people are in diaspora in the first place. And so when people say, well, why did you come here? I ask them to then ask the question, why were they forced to come here? What are the global dynamics, again, of diaspora and migration patterns that were happening that condition the individual choices that people had to make? And again, the answer often points back to coloniality and, again, ongoing dynamics of racial capitalism and oppression and the ways that the US has destabilized and the West has destabilized a lot of our countries so that they have to go elsewhere to find better opportunities. This is recent history as well as, you know, back to the Opium Wars, right? Like my family's from Southern China, and we had multiple waves of migration where my great grandfather came to San Francisco, and then because of the Chinese Exclusion Act, he wasn't able to go home, and so he died of lung cancer in San Francisco, and then by himself, and then nobody else from my family really came until my parents after the Immigration Act in 1965, and right, like there's all these geopolitical and historical contexts that are shaped by Western imperialism that, again, condition our lives in diaspora right now.
When you talk about the book being a radical vision of Asian American political identity, what does that look like in reflection of how you feel within your own community there is a vision of racial identity? Because there's a radical vision of racial identity versus like that comes from the outside, right?
Yeah.
Like this is what Asians are, but like from the inside of your community, where does that reflect?
Yeah, I think there has been a radical current of Asian American identity since the Asian American movement that was anti-war, it was anti-imperialist, it was anti-capitalist, it was very socialist, very grounded in cross-racial solidarity, inspired by the Black Power movement, right? But I also think that because of the model minority myth and neoliberalism and the seduction of adjacency to whiteness and anti-Blackness, all these things, right? There's also an Asian American identity that is about aligning with whiteness. And then there's also this like neoliberal, quote, progressive image of an aspiration of Asian American identity that is about, right, like gaining representation in Hollywood, representation in Congress seats. And again, I'm not saying that like we all have to have made the choices we have to make to survive, but this is really not an argument for representation and inclusion. It's an argument for refusal and indictment of this thing that people want to be included into. And I get a lot of this from feminist Pacific Islander scholars who make the differentiation between Asian American identity politics and Pacific Islander politics of decolonization, which, right, where the politics of representation, we see the state as the solution. We see that if we can just get more representation in this state, then we'll all be better because these representatives will help uplift all our people. Where
never happens. I've never seen it happen.
Yeah. I mean, maybe people will proclaim to do that, but once we see people kind of go through this very dehumanizing, violent system, they don't end up representing us. They become part of, or they become, fixated with surviving that institute, whatever, right?
Yes.
And what I have learned from, I think, a lot of politics of refusal from Black radical traditions, as well as, again, Pacific Islander feminisms, is that the state then is not a site of solution. The state is the problem to begin with. And so when we look at politics of decolonization for Hawaii, for example, or different Pacific Islands, it's not really about trying to gain seats in this imperialist state that is occupying your homeland. It's about actually decolonization and kicking out that empire from your homeland and thinking clearly about what it means to reestablish your relationship with your own sovereignty. And so for me, then, I'm not Pacific Islander. I'm Cantonese. My parents are from Hong Kong. I really had to think about then what does this mean for me? How do I situate myself? I feel like, this feels aspirational to me, right? This politic of decolonization and refusal. I don't really aspire to like represent my people in these institutions, but I really had to, in the book, explore then the reality that I am both, my family and my ancestry is both victimized by American imperialism, but we are also settlers here, right? And so again, like this politic of refusal then is really reckoning with what is my relationship to empire right now in a land that doesn't belong to me, but I'm here because of legacies of coloniality, right? And what does it mean for me then to take a posture of refusal and resistance? And, you're talking about aligning with each other and building coalition. What does it mean then for me to take a posture of solidarity and coalition with other people who also have been victimized and displaced by empire, rather than continuing in this like aspirational settler mindset, right?
If we can just be, it's this energy of, can't we all just get along? No, because I don't like y'all, like,
exactly. Yeah.
And I'm not going to shut up about the stuff you're doing just to get along with you.
Yeah.
Which is, the vibe. Speaking of vibe, in your home with you two smarties, what are things that you all do that are silly? Because I don't think people understand that the smarties be the silliest. me and Mark Lamont Hill are two of the silliest people you've ever met in your life. So you and Jeff, you're on here. You're very serious, but I know there's silliness.
No,
what's going on?
We need to be silly to get through all of this, and to, like there will be pleasure and shenanigans and tomfoolery on the compound as we get through the revolution. Okay, me and my best friend always say, like, we don't know how to forage, we don't know how to hunt, but we will be the town jesters of the compound as everything collapses around us. What do we do? I mean, honestly, Jeff is actually probably the sillier one. I get really, like, even this morning, we're like getting the kid ready to go to daycare. They're both like just singing their asses off. And I'm like so overstimulated. I'm like, why are you both singing so loud at the same time? And then I'm like, okay, let me calm down. This is a beautiful moment, even though I'm overstimulated.
Center.
Yeah. I don't know, just things like that, trying to be present with our kid. It's really a joy to have a toddler right now because everything is so new to him and we get to kind of experience the world through his eyes as opposed to my very jaded, tired eyes.
Fair. Yes.
What else do? We watch K-dramas. I watch a lot of trashy reality TV, and a lot of disassociation right now, to be honest. So I can be present in this moment.
Fair. Fair.
Yeah.
Honestly, I can't watch trashy reality TV because it literally makes me be like, it is because of this programming that people have been deprogrammed to resist.
True. It's so true. I gotta stop. I am part of the problem.
No, it's someone, because I come from that business, you know, so coming from the entertainment business, I'm just like, you guys keep making this trash. I mean, every other show is either at this point reality TV or something having to do with military or the cops. Yeah.
No, the disassociation plus propaganda at the same time is so deep. And I'm watching it and I'm just like, let me just like.
Or we could do this, So, no, I feel you. Well, where can people, actually, you did send me this link, so I'm going to pull it up. You are on a book tour. Are you still on the tour?
I'm taking a break and then I'll be on the East Coast in April.
Oh, will you now?
Yeah, I'll be doing an event. It's on my website, but I'll be doing a few events in Boston, and I'm doing an event on April 22nd at Powerhouse Arena in Brooklyn. And we might be adding a few more dates. So if you wanted to do anything together, Amanda, because I know you're on the East Coast, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, we should.
We got to get something going on.
That out.
Yeah.
And I mean, at the very least, I want to, meet you in person.
Oh my gosh.
That's the other thing that this internet be making you feel like you met people, and then you're like, no, I haven't met you.
I totally need the IRL embodied experience of Amanda Seales. So I'll be letting you know. Don't worry, I'll let you know.
Please let me know.
And I'm in your area. Yeah.
Now you all, this is a link where you can go and get the book Unassimilable. And this is through Bianca's site. So that's important because I know a lot of people are like, a lot of people feel like the only place you can get books is Amazon. And I'm really trying to dispel this. Like, for the record, authors get the least amount when you buy it from Amazon.
Yeah.
Just so you guys know.
Yeah.
When you buy a book from Amazon, the authors literally get the least. They put everything on sale all the time.
Yeah, they do.
Immediately. And you're just like, I just came out. Like, let me live.
Can I be full price for like one more week? That's how I felt. But yeah, there's a bunch of links there of where you can buy. I recommend Bookshop, and you can support local bookstores.
Yes.
But it really is available wherever you want to get your books. The library, requested from the library, that is an act of love to me, I feel like. Yeah.
Do you guys have any questions for Mrs. Mabute-Louie? If you do, drop them in the chat before we get out of here. Where do you feel like in writing this book, it has pushed you to your next phase of life?
Oh, I did write a book. I wrote a chapter in the book about, and really interrogating disposability politics in our movements and the ways that we sometimes just throw each other away, to put it frankly. Right? Like, disposability politics comes from a lot of scholars and practitioners of disability justice, and the ways that our capitalist society deems certain people as disposable, so we throw them away. We don't give them access. We saw that a lot, for example, in the country's response to Hurricane Katrina victims. But I was investigating how I saw that in social justice spaces and organizing spaces. And this propelled me to the current phase of what I'm thinking through, because it made me think and interrogate kind of the role of spirituality and interconnectedness to combat those kinds of harmful ethics as we're trying to like build movements and do good in the world, right? And I explored, this is the penultimate chapter, but I explored a lot of, how to become, in the words of Grace Lee Boggs, to become more human beings. And right now I'm exploring the role of spirituality in that, to tune in to more of our inherent interconnections, so we don't throw each other away at every step of revolution.
It's so casual.
Right.
The way it happens. It's very that. I mean, I've experienced that in real time, where it's just like, you're irrelevant now.
Yeah.
You didn't agree with this thing, or, you don't represent this thing the way that we want it to be represented. So I feel like the disposability has broadened in terms of like who is allowed to exist, who's allowed to talk about their existence. Right? Yeah. Because that's the other thing. It's very much this idea of only certain people get to speak.
Yeah.
I mean, we're seeing that in real time with the White House press corps.
Yeah.
Okay, so Rachel Porter asks, Ms. Bianca, what's your favorite history subject or timeline?
Oh, I have to think about this. I'm trained as a sociologist, and sociologists are like sadly ahistorical. They don't think about history. And
really?
So, yeah. Well, at least from my experience, it's very like empirical what's happening now. But I think my favorite, a lot of what has grounded me and I've learned a lot about, is the radical movement history of Asian Americans in the 1960s and 70s, the anti-war movement. There, if you wanted to go into a deep dive, there are groups called the Red Guard and Iwar-Kun that were inspired by the Black Panther Party to start these communities and political groups that really were about keeping their own folks and young people safe and doing political education about American empire. And in the historical amnesia of being American and the particular ways I've experienced that as an Asian American, that movement history has been really exciting for me to learn.
Nice. Next question.
Oh,
Mrs. Mabute-Louie, what would be the best way to break through the model minority haze that has engulfed a lot of the older Asian community?
this is a great question. I think about this and I get this question a lot. I think in the past, I would try to just come at elders or other, not even necessarily elders, this is also young folks too, but people in my community who kind of believe in this myth of meritocracy. Maybe they believe in a lot of anti-Black narratives that if you don't have access, if you don't get into college, you don't get into this institution, it's because you're lazy or you're not smart enough, right? Like, I'll just approach it with curiosity and be like, oh, where did you hear that? And make themselves explain their thought process. I will say right now, this year has had me all sorts of fucked up, Amanda. Like everything, everything.
It's only February.
Right? It's very disheartening. But I think lately I've been thinking about it differently because I've been doing that approach with my parents for over a decade now. And now they're at the point where they're like afraid to talk to. I think they find me extremely annoying. And like, they're always like, oh, we didn't mean it like that. One example is like we were at a family wedding and I think I had talked to them about BDS and boycotting Starbucks. And they had got something from Starbucks and they're like, oh, we only got water. Like we didn't buy. And I'm like, it's okay, guys. Like, and it's made me reflect like, oh, am I really annoying?
I mean, it's ethically annoying. That's fine.
It is ethically annoying. But it just made me think, if people are just afraid of saying or doing the wrong thing, but materially nothing has really changed in their lives or their heart posture has not changed, then like, what are we doing? How do we materially get us all to understand our interconnections? And again, I've been thinking about this more differently lately because I think when climate crises comes, which it already has, and when the collapse of empire comes, which it's already here, like I think about immigrant churches, for example, that often have adopted very violent white supremacist theologies and politics that are very anti-immigrant. And at the
immigrant churches that are anti-immigrant?
Yeah. So people who I think Asian evangelicals or ex-evangelicals might know this, but there's a lot of Asian immigrant evangelicals, and this is kind of my specialty in my PhD, who sometimes come from Southern Baptist tradition, who have very, again, like homophobic, often anti-immigrant, even white Christian nationalist politics and theologies, especially here in Texas. So I've heard in an immigrant church, pastors talk about immigrating, quote, the right way, even though there are likely undocumented folks in their congregations.
In the congregation.
And so I think about that. And I also think about how these spaces are like really socialist in the ways they care for each other. That I've also seen these churches literally like pay each other's hospital bills, really take care of each other in a radical way that sometimes I don't see in the spaces that supposedly have the same politics as me. And so anyways, I'm thinking this long-winded answer to this question, but all of these binaries and categories I had previously are kind of getting broken down. And I feel less like, oh, I want this group of people in my community to get to this particular place politically. And I'm thinking more about how is care happening. And it's not to dismiss, again, the violent politics and ideologies of our elders that they may have.
Two things can be true.
Exactly. Yeah.
I do think though that there is a certain level of value to like, even if there hasn't been material change, just do the thing that needs to get done. Just because I don't think some people can materially change, but they can also be expected to not contribute to harm.
Yeah,
right?
that's true.
And so when we say make racists afraid again, it's like there is a really frustrating reality to the fact that this country has not culturally shifted away from racism in like a committed way. But there is also something to be said for the fact that many of us who came of age during a time where racism was considered like untoward, like I grew up in the 90s and in the 80s, and you really didn't see racist-ing in the same way that you are right now or before. Like it had been kind of like tucked away. And I know that doesn't make it, that's not solution, but I will say that I feel like I had a different childhood experience because of that, which shaped me in a different way, you know, to be able to show up. Because I didn't have that additional trauma with all of the other just, oh my gosh, why don't I have boobs and everyone else does trauma?
Yeah.
Amanda got mosquito bites. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Such real relatable trauma. No, but yeah, I think that's fair. I sometimes think about like, let's bring back shame again.
Yes.
Right?
Bring back shame. Make shame famous again.
Yeah.
Shame was popping for a moment, and you know, then it got out of hand, because that's really what happened. It's like, I feel like shame turned into cancel culture, which then became like completely unwieldy. And then the pendulum swang the other way, which is shame nothing.
Yeah. But there are some things we need to shame and make, like you said, people afraid of. Yeah. It's just accountability. Yeah.
All right. Last question. Last question from Miss Latia. Miss Bianca, how are you intentionally going about the practice of collective gathering since these internet streets are less and less safe?
Yeah, I think trying to be in person with people more. Okay, lately I've had this goal of trying to meet my neighbors more. It's interesting when you have a kid, because you then have this like kids social circle, and you know, there's the playground and stuff, and I'm trying to challenge myself to like ask other parents for their numbers to connect, whatever. Because I feel like there's this circle of relationships where you don't know anything about these people, but you cross paths physically with them a lot. And again, when climate crisis comes, I'm like, I'm gonna need to know who my neighbors are. I'm gonna need to know who has a generator, who has solar panels, right? And so I'm trying to like be more intentional in the physical locale that I'm at, but it's really vulnerable. I'm introverted, and Jeff's out here talking to all types of people, and I'm like, stop. But for me to do that, it takes a lot of effort. But and then also when you have a kid, it's like I have nothing in common with this person except for the fact that we have a kid the same age. But I'm also just like seeing that.
Have you seen the movie Night Bitch?
No.
Watch
it. Sounds
it.
familiar. Okay.
With Amy Adams. That exact sentence is said in the film.
Oh my God.
I have nothing in common with these people except for the fact that we have kids that are the same age. But there ends up being a whole
interesting
trajectory around that I think you might appreciate just as a mom with a toddler.
Okay, I'll need to watch that. But just more intentional meeting of neighbors and making myself vulnerable in that way a little bit.
I'm going to go to a city council meeting.
Okay.
I want to get involved in the community garden
when
winter goes. And I want to start having Amanda Land meetups. There's people like in various cities, and I want to, it's a time thing, but I want to figure out how to like find whether it's restaurants or like friendly spaces in different cities where like the Amanda Landers can go, and they're in the same time meeting each other. They're also patronizing a space that is a safe space type vibe, you know? So it's going to take some organizing. I need to basically just like designate somebody to be the organizer of that and then provide what needs to be provided. The way we always do things here with our Amanda Land ambassadors is we give you the stage to leave a final statement to the people from any point of view, from anything you want to say, whether it's related to the book or related to organizing, related to resistance, related to Miss Rachel, whatever. And so I now give the stage to Ms. Bianca Mabute-Louie.
Oh, thank you. I'm going to keep it short. I'm just going to say, buy my book right here or request it from the library, and stay silly and connected with each other.
Silly and connected with each other. Thank you so much for joining us. Go and get Unassimilable. It is available wherever you get books. An Asian Diasporic Manifesto for the 21st century. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Amanda. This was so great.
Fabulous. Have a good one. You guys, we did so much learning today. That's why there's only 536 people here. You know, whenever we're doing heavy learning, people are like, ugh. I enjoyed laughing and learning with you. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And tell your friends. Also, listen to the podcast. It's available everywhere pods are casted. Listen ad-free by subscribing to Patreon Amanda Seales. Come on and join the Seales Squad. Views from Amandaland, live 10 a.m. Eastern, Monday through Wednesday, with content on Thursday and Friday at YouTube Amanda Seales TV.
Smart, funny, and